Greetings. Welcome to the last appendix to Church in the World. I thought that today, of all days, I should give you some justification for this series. Something beyond the regular resources of the ELCA, something tangible and obvious. And my hope is that this will do that. This is an excerpt. The date of this writing is the 27th of June, 1944. Dietrich Bonhoeffer writes from prison to his friend Eberhard Bethge. I'm at present writing an exposition of the first three commandments. I find number 2 particularly difficult. The usual interpretation of idolatry as wealth, sensuality, and pride seems to me quite unbiblical. That is a piece of moralizing. Idols are worshipped, and idolatry implies that people still worship something. But we don't worship anything now, not even idols. In that respect, we are truly nihilists. Now for some further thoughts about the Old Testament. Unlike the other Oriental religions, the faith of the Old Testament isn't a religion of redemption. It's true that Christianity has always been regarded as a religion of redemption, but isn't this a cardinal error, which separates Christ from the Old Testament and interprets him on the lines of the myths about redemption? To the objection that a crucial importance is given in the Old Testament to redemption from Egypt and later from Babylon, cf. Deutero-Isaiah, it may be answered that the redemptions referred to here are historical, i.e., on this side of death, whereas everywhere else the myths about redemption are concerned to overcome the barrier of death. Israel is delivered out of Egypt so that it may live before God as God's people on earth. The redemption myths try, unhistorically, to find an eternity after death. Sheol and Hades are no metaphysical constructions, but images which imply that the past, while it still exists, has only a shadowy existence in the present. The decisive factor is said to be that in Christianity, the hope of resurrection is proclaimed, and that means the emergence of a genuine religion of redemption, the main emphasis now being on the far side of the boundary drawn by death. But it seems to me that this is just where the mistake and the danger lie. Redemption now means redemption from cares, distress, fears, and longings, from sin and death, in a better world beyond the grave. But is this really the essential character of the proclamation of Christ in the Gospels and by Paul? I should say that it is not. The difference between the Christian hope of resurrection and the mythological hope is that the former sends a man back to his life on earth in a wholly new way, which is even more sharply defined than it is in the Old Testament. The Christian, unlike the devotees of the redemption myths, has no last line of escape available from earthly tasks and difficulties into the eternal. But like Christ himself, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? He must drink the earthly cup to the dregs, and only in his doing so is the crucified and risen Lord with him, and he crucified and risen with Christ. This world must not be prematurely written off. In this, the Old and New Testaments are as one. Redemption myths arise from human boundary experiences, but Christ takes a hold of a man at the center of his life. I was struck by that. That's from quoted in Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Letters and Papers from Prison. In my volume, that's on page 336. It's in a letter to Eberhard Bethge and from Tegel, 27th of June, 1944, page 336 in my paperback edition. Why did I read that to you? Well, this is called Church in the World. That's what I've called this series, and I've done that very intentionally. I worry sometimes when I hear people say things like, I don't want to hear politics in church, or I don't want to think about that in church, or I go to church to feel better, or I go to church to be inspired. What I really am hearing, or what I worry I might be hearing, I want to be charitable as much as possible. What I worry I might be hearing there is, I'm not looking for the world to change or get better, and I'm not looking to change how I live. I'm looking for a promise that everything's going to be okay on the other side. I'm looking to know that I'm going to get out of life alive. And Bonhoeffer's point here is that's not what the Gospels and Paul do, and certainly not the kinds of redemptions we see in the Hebrew Scriptures. He points to deliverance from Egypt, right? That wasn't redemption from Egypt out of death, right? Out of the world, right? Israel is not saved from Egypt and Babylon so that it can just go off into Shangri-La and never be seen again. Israel is a visible community present in the world. In fact, that's why God saves Israel, to be present in the world. And Jesus and Paul both seem to say quite explicitly, as far as I can remember, that we are saved not so that we can enjoy being saved somewhere else, but so that we can then be sent back into the world. Right? We are empowered, saved, and called by God to be sent out there into a world that needs us to represent and be and seek differently. We are redeemed for a purpose, and that purpose is found in the world. The church, then, like Israel, redeemed by Jesus, is not redeemed to be sent into life eternal. It is redeemed to be sent into the world to be the body of Christ. I worry that what's really at the root of so much Christian quietism and apathy is the sense that Christianity is fundamentally a faith about the afterlife, the resurrection of the dead, and the eschaton when Christ will come anew. And I worry that that transforms from hope that sustains us in our vocation in the world into an excuse to ignore being church in the world. So I've done this series in the season of Easter. And the reason I've done it in Easter is because this time of resurrection is not about the promise of our resurrection after death, but the resurrection of us as God's people, as church in the world. Because the resurrected Jesus, in every gospel where the resurrected Jesus does anything, the resurrected Jesus does not simply float into the sky or disappear. Even in Mark, where the resurrected Jesus is never actually seen, the resurrected Jesus is on the move, doing things in the world. In Matthew and Luke and John, the resurrected Jesus speaks and acts. In the season of Easter, it behooves us to remember that if the resurrected Jesus ascends into heaven to send the Spirit to us, so that we, having received the Spirit, become now the body of Christ, which is to say the body of the resurrected Jesus, now, here, that means that the resurrected Jesus is still in the world as the church. And then we have to ask, then why is the church so rarely in the world and so rarely talking about or doing things in the world? So I've created this series to talk about the foundational documents that can help guide us be church in the world as an application of the gospel proclamation, right? This is not about being some different type of Christian. I think Bonhoeffer has it right. This is the only type of Christianity that ever existed. Everything else was just mislabeled. I hope that explains a little bit of why I've done what I've done, and that this series will help you be a part of the church in the world. Thank you very, very much for your attention, your support, and your time. Pray for me, pray for the church. Love God, love your neighbor, and do justice. God bless you.